You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, and welcome to episode 201 of the Soul Forge podcast.
Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast. I don't know if you can hear that right now, but apparently the dogs are going crazy upstairs. I'm not sure if the microphone is picking that up, but something's happening, and I'm down in the basement recording, and hopefully everything goes well, so we'll just have to see how that transpires. Anyway, this week's episode is all about disappointment. And why am I talking about that? Well, because I was hoping to bring you a spectacular interview with sex worker Alice Little, so we could learn all about how that industry operates and find out things that we don't know and get a different perspective on that kind of a life. Alas, she is very busy doing whatever she does. I'm not going to speculate. I know she's on some kind of a tour, and we were supposed to have a Skype interview last Thursday. And then, of course, as I mentioned on last week's episode, that's probably not going to get to happen because of reasons. And, of course, it didn't happen because of reasons. I was speaking to her agent, manager, whatever, whoever handles her emails, and turns out we were going to reschedule, but we're going to postpone it until Alice is a little bit less busy. Hopefully, one day in the near future, we will have an Alice Little interview. So that got me on the thought of disappointments and how you deal with them and how you overcome disappointments. I wasn't actually going to do an episode at all this week, because I'm really friggin' tired, gang. Haven't been sleeping well. I don't know why. Just reasons, I guess. I thought, well, I don't want to disappoint the listeners by not putting out an episode this Thursday. So once again, disappointment became a topic that I figured I should focus on. In the early days of the podcast, what I did was specific topics. Later on, it became about stories and interviews and stuff. But at the beginning, we did topics about happiness, decision-making, fatherhood, all kinds of different things like that in the first 20 episodes or so. And I haven't done that in a while. And just looking through my notes here, I wrote down a list of things that I'd like to cover in the next couple of months. Today's topic is disappointment. I'm also going to maybe cover the fear of missing out. I'm going to cover sadness as a topic. I'm going to cover joy. I'm also going to cover maybe regret. Those are the 5 that I've written down, and we'll see what happens, because other things come up and people reach out and want to be interviewed on the podcast, and I have things that happen in my life that I'm like, oh, I better tell the listeners this. So we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the order of events is coming up as, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, what I did was I Googled some disappointment stuff. And disappointment is a noun. It means sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectation. Sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. Turns out disappointment can be an emotion. It tells me here that as an emotion, researchers describe disappointment as a form of sadness, a feeling of loss, an uncomfortable space, or a painful gap between our expectations and reality. When we believe that there's something we must have to be happy and fulfilled, we can set ourselves up for disappointment. Basically, it's a gap between expectations and reality. pretty much what it is in a nutshell. And just for a bit of history, for you history buffs out there, the noun disappointment comes from the Middle French word disappointer. And I'm sure I could say that with a French accent, but you don't want to hear that. So disappointer, meaning undo the appointment or remove from office. It's true that a friend canceling your plans or losing your job is a disappointment, but today, disappointment can describe anything that crushes your hopes, ruins your day, or otherwise lets you down. That's what disappointment is. It's basically a feeling of sadness and non-fulfillment. So I just wrote down a few different things. But before we get into that, I wouldn't want to disappoint you by not playing a promo for another podcast right here on the ESO network. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it right here.
We're the Con Guys, as in Comic-Con, and this is the Con Guys Show, coming at you straight from the heart of Hollywood, California, with the news, celebrity interviews, and fun-loving opinions to help fuel your passions. We are your ultimate insiders, filmmakers, writers, actors, costumers, gamers, panelists, but most of all, we are fans. And whether it's sci-fi, collectibles, comic books, gaming, animation, cosplay, or fan conventions, if you love it, we cover it. Your behind-the-scenes look at all things con.
And whatever that podcast promo was for, I'm sure that group of hosts will not disappoint you in any way whatsoever. So maybe go check them out after you finish listening to this wonderful episode. So, what did I write down? Things that have disappointed me in the past. Just some brief general outline ones here. I won't get too deep into them unless I do. You can be disappointed when someone is not as excited about something as you are. You know, when you have like a favorite TV show or a movie or a song that you just absolutely love and you just want to share it with your friends. And so you sit them down and you say, okay, here it is. This is the best thing I've ever seen. Come and watch it. And they don't care. So you're disappointed that the thing that you love doesn't affect them nearly as much. For me, for example, I'll often put out a podcast episode that I think is absolutely fantastically amazing. I'll do great cover art for it. I'll come up with the perfect title, and then it won't get a lot of downloads, or people just don't care, don't get any comments on it. No one sends in an email or whatever. And then that's a little bit disappointing, especially when you put in so much work. For example, the final episode of the Rusted Robot podcast doesn't have nearly as many downloads as I think it should have. It's only been out since April 18th, and I think it's got like 86 or something. And I guess that's pretty good, but not nearly as great as it could have been, because back in the heyday of the podcast, you used to get 400, 500, 600 downloads per episode. I guess people have frittered away or disappeared. I don't know. So anyway, that's a disappointment. Right now, I am going through my totes of collectibles. I've been collecting for more than 30 years, and it's time to shed some of these things. And I posted a bunch online, and I've sold a couple things, but I'm not getting nearly the response to the things that I'm selling as I would like to get. So that's a little disappointing, because I've put my heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into collecting. Okay, that's a little bit overly dramatic. No, I haven't put in sweat and tears and all that stuff, but I've collected a lot over 30 odd years. I've got a lot of totes and a lot of cool stuff, but not everybody thinks it's cool, or they don't want to spend the money on it or whatever. So that's a little bit disappointing. I also wrote down jokes and shows, but I've already mentioned that. Something that also disappoints me is often what I'll do in the episodes is ask for listener feedback, or for people to share the links, or maybe put in a review in the iTunes store or whatever podcast platform they're listening to. And the lack of response to that is a little bit disappointing. I guess I shouldn't be disappointed, because I listen to podcasts all day long and I never respond to anybody either. So it makes sense. It's a passive medium. You put a lot of work into it, you don't get a lot of response, and that's pretty common across all podcasts unless you're super famous. But still a little bit disappointing. What else? I've also got when you're disappointed in yourself. This can happen quite often. You can expect something from yourself, and either you're too lazy, or you don't have the skill, or some other outside factor prevents you from doing what you want to do properly. When you rush things and screw them up, that can be a disappointment. What do I mean by that? Well, you have a project that you have to do and you want to do it perfectly, but you put it off too far, or you put it off too much, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like your deadline's coming up faster than you anticipated, so you rush the thing and you get a poor mark, and you're disappointed in yourself because you knew you could have planned your time better.
If you're loving this podcast, you should tell a friend about it.
Spread the word about podcasts you think they would enjoy. There's something for everyone, from entertainment and lifestyle
To news and politics
and more. Share it on social media.
Believe it or not, some people don't know how great podcasts are.
or even how to find and listen to them.
You can help change that with a click.
Tell your friends about your favorite podcast.
Thanks for spreading the word.
Or how about when you break something? That can be disappointing. Like maybe you have a family heirloom or something like that. Like, for example, I have got a tote of my great-grandmother's dishes, and I've been carrying them around for about 10 years because my mom gave them to me, and they're not dishes that you can actually use. So I've got these things here, and one time when I was moving them, there was another piece in the tote, and it hit the other piece, and it snapped the lid off of the teapot. So that's broken, and that's disappointment. Because, well, obviously I wasn't careful. I also didn't know the thing was in there. Precious family heirlooms are, well, not destroyed. I could glue it back together if I get the proper glue. I just haven't done that yet, but that's a disappointment. Or how about when you screw up a presentation? I know I did that a lot in high school and university because you can be nervous in front of a crowd of people and somehow you screw up. Either you didn't anticipate the questions that they were going to ask you, or you didn't prepare properly, or you're just nervous and stumbling over your words and you don't flow as much as you would like. So that can be a disappointment as well. I'm going to ask you out there in podcast land, what are some of the disappointments that you have faced? Let's do a whole feedback episode about this. soulforgepodcast@gmail.com. Send me your comments, send me your concerns, send me your questions, send me your disappointments. I'm almost going to guarantee that no one is going to send me an email, so that's a little bit disappointing, but I've also anticipated with an expectation that no one is going to, so I'm not going to be truly gutted and heartbroken by the lack of response. Okay, what else? Just a few more things before we get into the positive spin on this topic. When you don't get the girl, you know, you have your sights set on this girl. Well, if you're a girl, you have your sights set on a dude, or maybe you're a girl who likes girls, maybe you're a guy who likes guys, whatever. You don't get the person of your dreams. That's a thing that can happen. That has happened to me several times, where I was really super interested in this girl and did everything I could to pursue it, and maybe there was an interest there, but the circumstances weren't right. That's happened to me at least 2 times that I could wax philosophically on, but I'm not going to because that's not this type of episode. So when you don't get the person that you want to be with. Another thing, just to turn up the geek factor, as many of you know, I'm a huge collector because I mentioned that earlier in this episode. Eagle Moss Publishing is a British company, and I think sometime in 2014 I started subscribing to their Starship of the Month collectible club. And basically what that is twice a month you get Star Trek starships in the mail. It's supposed to be once a month. You get 2 ships every month. And for a long time that happened. I think they have around 200 ships. And for quite a while, they kept messing up. Like, I think for the first 2 or 3 years, I got them all the time. And then, for whatever reason, for a whole year, they stopped shipping to Canada. Then I would get 2 or 3 more shipments, and then they'd stop for another 6 months. And finally, last year, I got an email from them saying that they've decided to stop shipping to Canada because they couldn't keep stock in stock, and also COVID was having an impact on them as well. So I was hoping to have a complete collection of 200 plus ships, but I don't, and I can't, and I won't. So being a completist and not being able to complete your collection is kind of a disappointment. Imagine that. But we can get over disappointments, and I've got 7 tips on how to limit your disappointment, or how to get over it, or how to feel better about things. So the first thing on the list is give yourself a limited amount of time to feel bad. So that's a good advice. This is being more mindful about things. So you have to acknowledge the letdown, but you can't get mired up in it. If you didn't win the lottery, give yourself an hour to feel bad. If you didn't get a promotion, or if your bonus was less than you hoped for, give yourself a day or two, but then move on. And that's important, because if you dwell on the thing, then the disappointment lasts longer. So number 2 is do not ruminate about what might have been. The more you dwell on a disappointment, the more it'll hurt and disrupt your ability to focus, concentrate, and problem solve or be creative. So be careful not to feed the disappointment and deepen the emotional hurt. So just don't focus on it over and over and over again, because basically what you're doing is beating yourself up. That's never good. So number 3 is to avoid the self-pity syndrome, because self-pity comes with a price. It takes away any feelings of empowerment and agency and makes you feel as though we don't have control over our lives. And that's a bad feeling, because we want to have control over our lives. We don't always. There's lots of things beyond our control, but if you pity yourself, you're indulging in it at your peril. You can foster a bad mood, and depression can result actually if you get stuck in that situation for too long. So don't be full of self-pity. Number 4 says to use self-compassion. Be sympathetic toward yourself and compassionate about the fact that you hurt. Don't beat yourself up or become self-critical, because doing so will only hurt your confidence, damage your self-esteem, and make you feel worse. And of course, we don't want that at all. We want to feel good about ourselves as much as we can. So number 5 says to put it in perspective. And that's very important, because you know how you're always living in the moment. You always think, oh, I'm going to remember this forever, but you're not. And so what the article that I found says, we often feel disappointed about things we are unlikely to remember in a month's time. How many of us will think back 5 years in the future to that day in 2016 when we didn't win the lottery? Very few. If the disappointment you experienced was significant, try to focus on the larger picture of your life and remind yourself of all the things that are going well and for which you can be grateful. So yes, put it into perspective. Realize that sure, that thing was disappointing. Give yourself the hour or the day to think about it and then move on, because more than likely you're just going to forget about it anyway. Do you remember how nervous you were for that grade 10 presentation in front of 30 members of your class, and they were all cooler than you and you were super nervous? Chances are they don't remember, even though you've been dwelling on it for the last 40 years. So put that into perspective. And number 6 says to identify the next opportunity. And this is easier to do with lottery tickets, of course, than with more significant events in your life that cause disappointment. But as they say in baseball, there's always next season. Regardless of what disappointed you, spend a few moments figuring out when and how you can try again. So there you go. So realize that thing didn't work out, but there are better things on the horizon, and enjoy that. So number 7 is the final one. Success does not equal happiness. Research on lottery winners has found that their level of happiness rises dramatically after they win, but then reverts to the same level of happiness they felt before they won, and that's usually within a year. So you're disappointed, but you'll get over it, basically. And even if the thing that disappointed you in an alternate reality didn't disappoint you and it came to pass, well, you're going to forget about it just as much as you forgot about the disappointment. So really, it's all a matter of perspective. And I guess that's pretty much it. It's a shorter than normal episode. I just wanted to touch on that, give you a little bit of something to think about, to talk about with your friends and family. If you would be so kind as to share the article with your friends, send that email that I asked for earlier, join the Facebook page, do all the things. And if not, well, that's okay too. I don't expect it, so I won't be disappointed. But if you do, I will be pleasantly surprised. So until next time, gang, I hope you'll all take care of yourself. And next week should be an even more spectacular episode. Wouldn't want to disappoint you. So until then, take care and remember, accept the fact that some people did not intend to let you down. Their best is just less than you expected. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Soul Forge podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we hope you'll tune in again next time. Remember that you can visit soulforgepodcast.com for all of our social media links, and don't forget to share the show with everyone you know. The Soul Forge podcast is your best source for living your best life.
Think about it.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.